Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode. I'm really excited to be here today together with Alexandra and Sjanie. And yeah, welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much indeed, Cherie.
Thank you, Cherie.
So,
Nice to be here.
yeah, so excited to talk to you today. I've recently been interviewed for your podcast, the Menstruality podcast, and I'm really excited to talk to you today. And we can start by maybe both of you just sharing your background and what you do and how you came together, and we can start from there.
You kick us off, Alexandra.
Don't, Sjanie. You do the front. You do the Red School front, and then I'll do the backstory. You're not going to.
No, I'm handing over to you. Sorry, I thought you were agreeing.
Okay. Well, I feel, who am I? And, I feel so expansive these days because I'm now post-menopause and living in this kind of, it's like, whoa, this huge big landscape and it's all wide open. But yeah, so Sjanie and I are co-directors, co-founders and co-directors of an organization called Red School. And in this organization, we teach on the power of the menstrual cycle and the initiatory journey, the spiritual path and practice that is built into this menstrual cycle from menarche to menopause and beyond. So our work is focused on really it's spiritual work that is rooted in self-care, and our foundation is the menstrual cycle, which is the most extraordinary process for bringing us home to ourselves, deeply into ourselves, to getting to know ourselves, how to take care of ourselves, how to find ourselves. This is and express ourselves in the world. This is all built into our menstrual cycle. Who would have thought it? It's not just about making babies. And so we teach on all aspects of this journey. And right in this moment, our big thing is that we have a new book coming out, which is on the power of menopause. And I'm just going to flash the copy now.
Oh, yeah.
So beautiful. I love the cover. What is the cover actually is it a flower or?
Well, what's interesting about the cover is we don't actually know what it is. It's one of these really great designs by Cam Baines, who is the designer at Hay House. And the effect that it's created, well, spoke to Alexandra and I both in very different ways. But one of the things I see with it is this incredible opening. Like, it really speaks to me of this awakening, like the veils parting and the light streaming in and this expansion of consciousness. So that's one of the things we've seen in it. But the other thing that has really become quite impactful for us about this cover, which actually Alexandra's acupuncturist pointed out to her, this gold lacing here that's in these cracks. Acupuncture said it reminds of kintsugi, which is the Japanese art form where broken objects are repaired with gold. I don't know what it is, but repaired with gold. So, yeah, so this once broken item is regenerated and brought into a whole new life, bringing this preciousness into the cracks. And that is so much of what menopause is about this experience of recognizing our humanity, our vulnerability, all the ways we failed and messed up, and that being reclaimed and recovered and loved, and actually becoming the precious fuel for what us, the second half of our life, is about. So that's what it means to us. What it actually is, we have no idea.
So beautiful. I really love it. I love the colors, and yeah, I'm so inspired by your work with the Red School, and I really loved your book, also Wild Power, the power of our menstrual cycle, our like whole, like, yeah, just going with the seasons of the body. And I'm also really, really curious about yeah, the wise power, because that's something that I think is so important for all of us, since we're not educated in our life cycle as womb bearers. It's so important to know like the different stages and to understand the quality and the power of that, and also how we embody the divine feminine in these different stages of life. So I would also love to know like your own experience and how you found this work into working with the wise power. Like, why did that become so important?
It's a journey. It was a journey that began almost 40 years ago. Well, even more than that. I think I was always coded for this work, because in my 20s, I just knew I didn't want to be on the pill for contraception. So I learned about how my body worked and did natural fertility awareness, for my contraception. So already I was starting to come into something. But I went through this massive awakening just before my 31st birthday, where I got the most outrageous menstrual pain, the menstrual pain from hell. And I made a radical decision in that moment to believe in my body. I thought, my body's talking to me, and I'm going to believe in it, and I'm going to follow my body. I was already into natural therapies. I just did not want to go down the path of drugs and surgery, for managing it with drugs all my life. And because it kept coming back each month, and it was shocking, and it would last for 3 days or more. And to cut a long story short, it took me quite a few years, but I healed myself of this pain. And the foundation of this healing was working with my cycle, what we now call menstrual cycle awareness, but I didn't have that phrase. All I knew was I had to give space to menstruation each month, because otherwise, the only other option was taking drugs, and I was, I had jobs to go to and things like that. It was challenging. And but I didn't want to put drugs in my body every month. And it's a complicated and long story, and I won't go into the detail of it. But basically, the more I was able to give space for menstruation, and also accompanied by good diet and other natural things, the pain started to reduce. And I started waking up to something very powerful at menstruation, because I was giving it space. And I was almost sort of having revelations and downloads, even as I still had pain, which is so radical, actually. And I then went on to, after sort of on this path of healing my body, I thought, I've got really good information here. I should start sharing this. So I began teaching menstrual health workshops, because I thought the only people who will come to a workshop on menstruation are those suffering. And so that's where it all began. And this was in Australia. I'm actually English, but then I moved to Australia when I was 30 and became Australian. I have an Australian passport and I have a bit of an Australian accent still. And I began these health workshops, and then I was able to bring in some of the deeper things that I was discovering, but it was listening to other people's stories, other women's stories about their experience. And I'm going, there it is. I started to, the cycle was talking to me more and more, not just through my own lived experience, but what I was hearing from others. So it was like this mosaic I was piecing together about the power of menstruation, first off, and then this idea of there being inner seasons to the cycle just landed one day. I was actually writing, this was actually when I was on to the second book, The Pill, Are You Sure It's For You? Because I'd already written my first book, Wild Genie, where I described my healing story. And then I suddenly realized, oh, wow, yeah, they're the inner seasons. And, you know, that there are powers built into these inner phases of the cycle that we call the inner seasons, like the seasons of the year. And that there are powers and that we can draw upon these powers. These powers are assets. And so the picture started to become more filled out, even more sort of complex in a good way, you know, more fulsome. And then, you know, eventually, and so my teaching expanded. I started teaching into natural health organizations to more individuals. It grew and grew and grew. And then I was coming closer to menopause, and I did what all good people going through menopause do. I changed everything. I suddenly had a kind of something came through very strongly that I had to stop being a psychotherapist. I had to leave Australia and go back to England. And I'm going, okay, how do I do this? This was huge. It took me 7 years to do it, just as I was finishing menopause. And of course, in that process of starting life in England, actually, it was before that I was doing workshops in England before I actually moved back. I met Sjanie. And Sjanie and I have been working together for about 15 years now. And it is I was going to say, a marriage made in heaven. I mean, a working marriage made in frickin' heaven. We together have just exploded this work. You know, it's just so rich and detailed. And of course, you know, together we've gone on. So we wrote our first book, Wild Power, together. And then recently, now in these last 2 years, we've been working away at this one. And this is actually coming out just next week, formally being launched next week. So yes, that is the short story. And Sjanie, I think you should share a little of your inner journey.
Well, I was quite captured by your question, Shireen, which, if I understood correctly, you were saying it's so important that we understand these different phases that we go through as womb bearers and why this wise power now. That was how I was hearing your question, which really sparked in me something that inspires Alexandra and I both very much, which is that the menstrual cycle and this whole menstruality experience that we have is actually a developmental experience that is ignited at menarche with our first blood. And then each menstrual cycle, each month, is actually maturing us, evolving us, growing our self-awareness, helping us develop our strengths, get to know our own nature. So it's this absolutely exquisite built-in process that we have in our bodies. And so much of the work that Alexandra and I initially have done together and that she pioneered has been really restoring this menstrual cycle knowledge. And then it became more and more disturbing to us how many people were really coming undone at menopause. And we should come undone at menopause, but in a way that wasn't supported or recognized or dignified as the rite of passage that it is. And because this menstrual cycle story has been so lost, so many people just don't have this preparation ground in their being to arrive at menopause ready and prepared. So it just became absolutely essential that we completed the story of this arc of being that we go through, this developmental process. And menopause is the other bookend of the journey, menarche being the initiatory, the ignition moment. Menopause is this profound re-ignition that happens and really kind of completes something in our psyches, preparing us for the second half of our life. So we have, Alexandra particularly has been busting to get this new story of menopause out, and it's been so satisfying to finally add this final piece to the menstruality story that's just been so long unnamed and unclaimed and unacknowledged. So that's why now, and it seems like the rest of the world is, joining in on the menopause conversation. There's definitely a zeitgeist happening.
Yeah, I love that. And also how you both have been working so hard to mainstream these topics, because it is becoming more and more mainstream and we're talking more openly about it. It's so strange that I was talking to someone the other day about why such important parts of women's lives, or women who have these cycles or don't have the cycles, but it's just like not talked about. And it's maybe for a long time also stigmatized due to like historical events and things like that. And now we talk about it not as a shameful thing at all, but as an empowering thing. Because imagine like having that shameful story background your whole life, like that's 50% of the population living in like suppressing something that is so beautiful and so important for life. So I'm really like grateful for the work that you've done, and really setting the foundation for what everyone else also is like working. It's like spreading like a tree that has been like growing for a long time and now coming out. So it's so important. And so I'm really curious about the book, because how did you, so from everything, all your experiences and everything that you've been studying and sharing and working with all of these different women, how is the book supporting in that? Like, how is it built up, or how did you organize the book in the best way, and what can you expect when you read the book?
Yeah. Well, I might start with this question, and Alexandra, I'm curious what you have to say. But one of the main things we did, Shireen, when we approached this book was really look at what people are experiencing now in menopause, and appreciating the kind of challenge and struggle that they're up against. And that so much of the remedy for that is redignifying the experience and really naming it as this profound initiation and awakening that it is. So one of the main things we wanted to do with the book was really tell this new story. And we brought in lots of examples from people who've done our courses, lots of stories from women about what their menopause journey had been like, what some of how they've benefited, what it's brought them, what the power is that it's awoken in them. So that felt really important, just to name and claim that story. And as part of that new story, we then went into unpacking the actual spiritual architecture of the process, which are the 5 phases of the menopause initiation. And Alexandra, you just did such a brilliant job of articulating these phases in the book. Alexandra worked mostly on this part of the book, really kind of describing each phase in turn, what you can expect, what kinds of things might happen, but most importantly, how to meet the experience that might happen in each of these phases. Alexandra, I'm curious to hear what you want to add to that, because that was such a juicy part of the book.
Yes, and the thing is, as I was really reflecting as you were asking the question, Sjanie, as you were replying, and I was thinking, I was thinking of my own experience of menopause, which was provocative psychologically and spiritually, but I had this feeling of being readied for it. And it was that my menstrual cycle years, because I had been practicing cycle awareness, well, actually, since, you know, consciously in healing in terms from my 30s, but of course I'd been doing fertility awareness all through my 20s. But I had developed, I felt connected to myself. I'd also done lots of inner work, so I felt a connection to myself, and I had a trust in the cycle, and I felt evolved into menopause. So although everything shifted and changed, I inside myself, it was normal. It felt normal and healthy, and I had a kind of understanding of what I had to meet and do. And then what I did was I began then eventually running workshops on, you know, this understanding, and I thought, yes, there are these. I began to see that there were sort of 5 stages, as Sjanie said, 5 phases, which actually echo what we call the 5 phases of menopause. You see, this my menstruation rather, the 5 phases of, we call them the 5 chambers of menstruation. So in our book Wild Power, we write about that, and that's like a mini version of the macro version you go through at menopause. So each month at menstruation, I had been tutored in something. So there was something implicitly understood in my being, even as, you know, there were provocative moments and big things being asked of me and my psyche being rewired, and, you know, these huge things going on. So I began teaching these workshops, and this map, if you like, of the 5 phases of menopause began to take on more color and form and shape. And I began to get much more organization around it, Shireen, because it's taken a long time to really articulate the kind of clarity we have in the book. I'm so proud of this book. It has been, it's like 10 years in the cooking, you know. It was about 10 or maybe 8 years ago we started running the workshops. And so it's like it emerged out of my experience of connection with the cycle, and then emerging more out of the stories, as Sjanie said, all these stories coming to us. And my capacity is just a talent I have for just kind of taking the stories in and going, oh, wow, yes. It was like the stories became these kind of explosions of illumination in me that gave me more and more clarity. And then it was this conversation with Sjanie as well that really helped to, because we have such engaged, muscular conversations, that we really got the clarity. And what it is a description. You see, menopause is not a health, it is actually a health crisis because people are suffering with so many, but it's actually not a health condition. It's not a health, it's not like a sickness we're suffering from. It's actually an entirely normal phase in a menstruating person's life. So why is it so mad? What is going wrong? And so we answer that question in the book. We examine that, and at the root of that is the loss of the story of the power of menstruation, the initiatory power of the menstrual cycle, and the great initiation that menopause is. Menopause awakens you in the most profound way to who you truly are and what you are here to serve in the world. And it sets you up for being a kick-ass troublemaker in the second half of your life. I mean, there's serious power going on. And it is completely wasted, Shireen, because women are going, menopause, and losing and going, and they're gone and they're not supported properly, and so on and so forth.
Alexandra, I am so glad you told that story, because what you shared there about how you felt readied for menopause because of your years of cycle awareness is so illuminating. And Shireen, the other piece that we brought into the book, because this has been the missing link, is really how your menstruating years prepares you for menopause, and how this practice of menstrual cycle awareness and actually our capacity to give space to our menstrual experience is the training ground for this spiritual initiation that happens at menopause. So we felt it was really important to speak to people, women who are approaching menopause in their 30s and 40s, to actually understand how their own awareness of their cycle experience can really set them up for a profound and illuminating transformation. So your story of that, Alexandra, is so good, and I loved what you said. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
There's so many, like, really everything that you shared it's inspiring, because first of all, like you said, this is a natural part of our life. So we're not like this straight line our whole life. It has these cycles. So it really is like cycle after cycle. It can be like a daily cycle to a weekly cycle, monthly. And really, that why has like the media and society painted this picture of menopause like something, it's like programming our mind our whole life, like this is happening, and it's like something really not so much to look forward to, and these imbalances that we have. But we are in imbalance, like in Chinese medicine, like being in balance, you have to have that yin and yang to balance each other off. And both the menarche and the menopause are initiations, and then each cycle can be initiatory as well. So I really love the connection of these 5 chambers and then the different stages of menopause. And we should be celebrating all of these, both these points, like when young girls have their first bleed, and also celebrate, okay, I'm done with this phase of my life and it's beautiful, and I should be grateful that I've reached this stage even, right? So even in Chinese medicine, which I work with, it's so important to be aware of these different seasons. And going into menopause also really helps us to work with that type of inner season, that how can we strengthen ourselves from Chinese medicine standpoint as well? How can we strengthen the kidneys? How can we like nourish our bodies? It's so important. Yeah, the water element. So there's so many different things that we can work with and empower ourselves and also harness that energy. And one question that came up, I would love to, like, for each of you to maybe mention an archetype of the divine feminine or a goddess that you feel embodies a lot of this power. If you have something that you can share, like what are your thoughts on that?
When you say this power, you mean the postmenopausal power?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a question and a half. I don't align with any one particular archetype. What I do feel is that I embody a range of experience within me. I think I'm going to have to answer, I'm going to have to speak from what I experience into seeing if I can answer your question. I feel freed to be myself now. I know who I am. It's clear what my nature is, what my talents are, what my gift is. And I have this really strong feeling of discernment, Shireen, about, what is me and what isn't me, what I can do, what I can't do. And in coming into that level of discernment about who I am, I had this enormous clarity about what it is I'm here to serve in the world. And the process of menopause has really rewired me to be able to serve that, because it's demanding. it requires real muscle and courage, and you know, I mean, power is power. It's dangerous. And I can misuse power and so on, along with the best of them out there misusing power if I'm not thoughtful and careful. But I like this word wise in our title, Wise Power. I do feel I have a bit more wisdom now, and that's come from humility. And let me tell you, menopause breeds humility, really big time. And so I have this freedom, I have this assertiveness, authority. I don't really care what other people think. I mean, I do a little bit, teeny weeny bit sometimes, but ultimately I don't give a rat's ass, you know. I just want to be myself. And I've got this refinement, this focus, this discipline. It's very beautiful. You feel like a direct kind of channel. So when I think of archetypes in there, I mean, I feel utterly like I am serving the divine feminine. I am serving, and I think of the Sophia, the Sophianic consciousness, which is Sophia is wisdom. And it is this work of profound intimacy with life. So if I was to choose something, I would choose the Sophia, because it is the Sophia for me. The Sophia is the symbol of the soul of the world. And I am utterly in service to the soul of the world. And it's a way of talking about the feminine. Now, this almost brings tears to my eyes to speak this, because I feel my most profound, deepest commitment is to serve this kind of sacred intimacy with life, and that is with each other. This work of bringing us into a deep belonging with life, and not trying to control life, but coming into a deep, profound belonging, a sense that we belong, we have a place here. And this is the work of the Sophianic consciousness for me. That is, you know, my front is menstruality, teaching on all that, all the amazing powers of the cycle and menopause, and really helping people to step into their power and to be able to realize who they are in the world. But right at the heart of it is, and there are many like me doing this work of deep repair, the restoration of the feminine, so that we may come into a place of trust and belonging with life and serve life rather than destroying life in the way we are doing now, destroying the planet. So I see myself, little old me here, knowing that there's lots of other little old me's out there going, we're holding a line with this one, you know, the feminine, she's here, she's back, and we're doing everything we can to validate those powers and restore them fully to the world. Yeah, I hope I've answered your question a little bit.
Yeah, well, I have nothing to add. I am very, very much with what Alexandra has said, and that's the answer I was arriving at was the Sophia. And I love the way you spoke about Alexandra. I could really feel how this initiation of menopause creates this opening in our beings to really feel life and our place in the world and our connection to it in a much more real, deep way. It really touched me when I've heard you speak like that before. It really touched me. Yeah, I'm joining you with that answer.
Yeah, that was very beautiful, and it feels very embodied, and also like merging many aspects in together. So it's like a merging, maybe like having the essence of many different archetypes in one. Because if you think about the trinity of, for example, Durga, Lakshmi, and Saraswati, the wisdom, the power, and this like really loving and holding space, like it's all of them maybe in one.
That's so true, because there is a huge fierceness. I feel a huge fierceness. I mean, you don't want to cross me ultimately.
Yeah, it's a power.
There's a real fierceness, but also this incredible, you know, because vulnerability. Vulnerability is a power, this exquisite kind of tenderness with life. It's enormous, huge tenderness, and this love that is just so huge and expansive. And then I have to say, in the middle of all this sits this human being who's very mortal. Trying to manage all these kind of cosmic forces, basically.
It's amazing. I really love that. Yeah, there's so much there. I'm also looking at the cycle that we've been following in the Daughters of Ishtar temple. So like going from like maybe the embodiment of physical conception and birth, and we can do that in different ways, not only in a physical baby, and then going into the eye gazing, and that eye gazing that happens between the mother and baby, and us with the divine as well, like that eternal gazing forth and back, and then the blood mysteries and the desire mystery that then leads to conception. I feel like when that has completed, you're in that transformative power where you can transform anything. It's like an alchemical process, not just merging into, like, because the conception is the conception of ideas and the mystery and the whole universe. But then like when you've done all of those stages, again, it merges all of these embodiments. So I think it's so beautiful, and I love that the passion and the devotional path, like to serve this and to support other women to wake up to this power, because then imagine like the transformations that we can do in our own lives and in the world if we empower this big part of the human population with this knowledge and wisdom. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to read the book. It's going to be amazing, as I just loved your first book. It's so mixed with stories, like you said, and also humor, and then also a lot of like, I really need to listen to it again, I think, because there's so much wisdom and following like day by day. So I'm really excited to also read Wise Power, because I feel like we need to have that as like a, it can be like a goal or something that we know that we can look forward to and how to work with it, because it's a beautiful process to move into. So I'm really excited for that. And how can people, what else are you offering that people can connect with you about? What are you doing with Red School right now? And yeah, all of that.
Yeah, well, for anybody who is approaching menopause or in menopause, we have our Menopause, the Great Awakener, which is our 6-week online program, a deep dive into these 5 phases of menopause. And that starts on the 2nd of November, and we run that every year. So for anyone near menopause, that's definitely the place to go. And then for people who are cycle curious, you know, still menstruating and wanting to learn about menstrual cycle awareness and get into gear with their cycle, we actually have a free course which is called Love Your Cycle, which is at redschool.net/love. And that's a very good place for people who are wanting just to kind of come in a very introductory way and get to know their cycle. And then of course there's the book Wild Power. So those are the 2 places I'd point people to. And we have this bigger program that we offer, which is our Menstruality Leadership Program, for those who are really committed to menstruality as a spiritual path and practice, and who are wanting to awaken their own leadership and calling and power in the world, so that they can be agents of change and realize their genius, which we believe everyone has. So that's yeah, we've had about 140 people this year going through that program. We're currently in the 2nd module of it. It is so rich and fun and deep. So that's anybody who wants to get their teeth tucked in, that's a good place to come.
Yeah, I really recommend that too. And the free course was beautiful to step into as well. And I will share all the links. And thank you so much to both of you for this beautiful sharing, for the work that you do, for the foundations that you've uh, created for all of us. So I'm really grateful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Shireen. It's so good to
Yeah.
talk with you and speak on this much loved topic. Thank you very much.